Hey guys, welcome back to the Duke Wisdom Podcast. Welcome to the Duke Fan Therapy edition of the Duke Wisdom Podcast. Recording this one not too long after the loss to Arkansas. And I know a lot of people don't like listening after losses, but misery likes company. And a lot of people, some people might want to listen in and hear someone else sort of vent about the issues that this Duke team seems to be having. Well, I hate to call anything a predictable loss, especially when it's against a team that was already 4-3 heading into the night and had lost multiple games in a row and didn't look fantastic. Got handled by Carolina, beat by Memphis. Arkansas didn't look great. And in the first half, they weren't great against Duke. They were good in the second half. I wouldn't say they were great. Duke was just not good. And they fell short in a lot of areas, and they have been consistently falling short in a lot of areas. They did that tonight. They did that against Arizona. They did that for a lot of the Michigan State game. Got lucky that Michigan State fell even further short. Did that against Southern Indiana for 20 minutes. Have failed to really look dominant at any point through the first 7 games at all against anyone, to be completely honest. They've won games convincingly, but they haven't looked dominant in any of the games against lower rated teams, but they have looked bad against tournament teams. Well, non-tournament teams in Southern Indiana case. A lot to talk about in this one. I digressed a bit. I hate to call something a predictable loss, especially against a team that isn't as good and is no longer ranked. And I don't believe should beat Duke, but when you're in front of a crowd of 19,000 that riled up, like they were at Arkansas, Duke, this is now their 3rd consecutive season that Duke has lost its first true road game. They lost at Ohio State in 2022, and then they lost last season at Wake Forest in their first true road game. So this is the 3rd one. You never love to see a preseason number 2 team at 5-2. You don't love to see it. Good thing is it's still November. Duke has a game with Baylor in 3 weeks that they need to win. They really, really need to win that game. Because if they don't, nobody's convinced this team can go to the Final Four. If Duke heads in to January with like a 9-3 record or whatever, I don't think many people are going to be too awfully convinced. Heck, get a little bit ahead of myself. There's a game Saturday. They go on the road again on Saturday at Georgia Tech. So first conference game, first road game, and Georgia Tech's coming off a ranked win over Mississippi State. Georgia Tech thinks they can win that game. They think they can win that game, and if Duke rolls out the same team that they just rolled out tonight, Georgia Tech can win that game. And you do not want to be 5-3. Having just lost to Georgia Tech with 2 losses in a row. So Duke not only needs to go out there and beat Georgia Tech, I think a lot of people would feel a lot better about this team if they went out there and handled Georgia Tech soundly. That would be a heartwarming thing to see. But that and a win against Baylor, I think, are the 2 things that are going to make me change kind of the way I'm thinking about this team.
Want to join a community of Duke accounts publishing news, theories, and predictions on Duke athletics? Join the Duke Wisdom Network. Just go to dukewisdom.org/join network today and fill out the form with your name and social media. Or you can DM at Duke_wisdom on Twitter or Instagram. Become a part of the community of Duke fans publishing their takes today. Again, that's dukewisdom.org/join network or DM at Duke_wisdom on Twitter or Instagram.
But there's a lot to talk about here. There's a lot to talk about First thing that you notice in the game, Kyle Filipowski picks up 2 really quick fouls and ends up having to come out of the game with 0 points. He was scoreless for a very long time in this game. He ends up scoring 26 points, his season high in scoring, the team's season high for an individual player, and scoring at 26 and 10. He didn't shoot particularly well from the floor. 45, I guess it's not horrible. Not great from 3, just 1 of 5, but overall one of his best games that he's played, especially the kind of half. He had like 23 points in the second half. He played terrific there, but Filipowski has to come out of the game, and the solution, and it's because he's the only big. He's the only big down there, and I've talked about this. He's put in such a different position than he needs to be in playing the 5. He doesn't need to play the 5 the whole game. And Ryan Young comes in as a 1-for-1 replacement, and he's put into the same position where they're calling these fouls, and he gets in foul trouble as well because there's not a lot of help. There's just not a whole lot of help there on that back line. There's Mark Mitchell, but he's guarding a guy that loves the 3-point line in Brazil, and there's just so much of the 3-guard lineups. And I think in the offseason, we discussed liking the idea of a 3-guard lineup. And we're like, yeah, I can see Jon Scheyer playing 3-guard lineups. It fits the kind of mold that he wants to go out there and throw out against other teams as a coach. It fits his play style, what he wants to do. Absolutely. I can see him running some of those lineups. What we have seen in the first 7 games is nothing but 3-guard lineups and often 4-guard lineups. I mean, in the game tonight, Mark Mitchell did not have a good game. Let's go out there and go ahead and put that out there. TJ Power love TJ Power. Going to talk more about him. He ended up playing a lot of minutes. Mark Mitchell did not play well. He was 0 of 3 from 3, 2-8 from the floor, just 6 points. It's back-to-back games with 6 points for Mark. After double digits in the first, I think, 4 games for Mark Mitchell, still got back-to-back 6 points. However, he was ending that game with Proctor, Roach, McCain, and Foster, and Filipowski. I have no problem with any of those guards, but I just don't love rocking 4 dudes 6'5" or shorter who are all effectively point guards or combo guards. Because, I mean, 6'5" is not that short. I mean, Matt Jones was only 6'6", and he could easily effectively guard small forwards. Terrific defender. These guys aren't Matt Jones, and they're all basically point or combo guard players. Rolling 4 of those guys and then just being like, good luck, go ahead and go get those boards, Kyle. Hold down fort, Kyle, is a tough ask. And, you know, I know Jared McCain's he's a very good rebounder for a 6'3" guard. Today he had 10 rebounds, his second game with 10 boards. He didn't have a very good offensive game, just 1 of 7 from the floor, 1 of 3 from 3, but hey, 10 boards, can't argue with that. But it's getting frustrating. And I think maybe even the most frustrating part is that he's playing TJ Power, but he's playing TJ Power. You know TJ Power, notorious power forward, greatest power forward. Like TJ Power is a textbook 3. He should be guarding. I mean, and there is a good argument that TJ Power can't defend on the perimeter yet. There's a great argument for that, and that justifies playing him at the 4 because it's an easier position for him to play defensively, especially in a zone defense, which they broke out a lot tonight. But it's just so jarring to be like, he'll bring in a new guy, and he's like, well, he'll bring in Reeves, and then he's like, well, we're still going to throw 4 guards around Reeves, and then he'll bring in Power and be like, well, we're going to play him at the 4 and then also still have 3-point guards. And I get it. These 4 guards, they're really good. They're really good, but it just feels like let's mix it up, man. Let's throw Sean Stewart into more lineups. Such an athletic player as Sean Stewart. Arkansas is an athletic team. I think it would have made sense to have put Stewart in there and just saw what he could do. I mean, Ryan Young got in foul trouble himself. The worst Sean Stewart could have done was also get in foul trouble, you know? So I'm going to keep saying it until it happens. Can they put out Shire? Can Shire put out Stewart and Filipowski at the same time for more than 60 seconds? I don't think it's that tough of an ask. The lineups are a little frustrating, but what's even more frustrating is just the offense. You know, for a team that plays 4 point guards at the same time, and some people listening might take a problem with me calling them all point guards. I guess they're not all technically point guards, but they're point guards. Like the way they play is very point guard or combo guard-esque. They're playing 4 small guards at the same time. You would think this team would play fast, but they do not. They do not play quickly. They do not move the ball incredibly well inside and out. They should be moving in and out, constant cutting, constant movement with all that speed. It's not there. There's so much dribbling, a lot of being stagnant out there on the floor and just whipping the ball around the perimeter. They go into Filipowski. He gets doubled a lot. It's ugly offense. This team is a work in progress. And I think a lot of people maybe didn't expect that. With 4 starters coming back from an ACC tournament championship team, a lot of people thought that this team wouldn't have the same learning curve, but ultimately, you know, those 4 guys are the same guys that struggled for months last season. This team wasn't very good. You know, in the middle of January, this team was closer. Duke was closer to missing the tournament than they were to getting a 5 seed in January of last year. They were a 9 seed. They were a loss away from dropping to the 10 line in January. Instead, they ended the season getting snubbed from the 4 line. It's a long season. Duke has a chance to pick up a big win against Baylor. They have a good chance to pick up wins in conference play. It's going to be tough against Miami. It's going to be tough against North Carolina. Carolina is right now, this will pain some people. Right now, Carolina's better than Duke. And that's hard to hear. That's hard to hear, I know, for a lot of Duke fans, but yeah, I think it's true at the moment. They did relinquish a 24-point lead against Tennessee and only ended up winning the game by single digits. But ultimately, Bacot looked great. Davis looked great. Ingram looked great. Carolina, at the moment, probably better than Duke. Probably. They beat that Arkansas team by 15. So it's frustrating right now, but it's a long season. It's a really, really long season. And you can't get too discouraged because Duke does frequently lose the first road game. And that's a very tough road game. And that's a team with its back against the wall in Arkansas. Duke was reeling heading into the night with the Southern Indiana game. You could tell something was off. Arkansas back against the wall had this hyped up crowd behind them. It was a trap game. It was a game that people have known for months that they very well might lose, probably would, and ultimately did. I think some of the things that were discouraging when they went to zone defense, like it still wasn't all that effective. They left the corners open. They just weren't as quick as they needed to be. The most discouraging thing is just how unenergized they were for like 37 minutes of the game. They just didn't have any urgency to their play at all. But in those last 3 minutes, they finally started trying to close those passing lanes. They were pressing, defending. If they did more of that for a longer period of time, they would have had no trouble winning that game at all. A sense of urgency would have won that game. They didn't play well, but just having a sense of urgency would have easily have won that game. Arkansas did not play an incredible game. It's not like Arkansas beat Duke. Duke beat Duke tonight. And that's a bit of a cliche thing to say, but it's very true. And it's been very true in a lot of these games that Duke's played. When things aren't going well, I'm not so sure it's because of the other team. They made a push. It was too little too late when they made a push at the end of the game. They end up getting it down to single digits. Where they get a steal, get it down to 9, and they get another steal, and Kyle Filipowski has it. And I'm thinking as he drives to that rim, here's a beautiful and one opportunity. As they close it out on him, and I'm like, okay, this could be something. But Arkansas slaps down very clearly on the replay, fouls him. That's not called. Ball goes off Filipowski's leg, out of bounds, just like that. What could have been a 7-point game, Arkansas goes down, hits a 3, turns back into 12. They keep pushing. They keep getting some steals. They get solid stops. They get the lead down to 3 at a point. They weren't able to make big shots. They missed a couple free throws down the line. Ultimately, couldn't get a steal at the very end of the game. Arkansas made their free throws for the most part. And it was just too little too late. They had started that run a couple minutes earlier. They might have walked out of there with a win. If they had played with that urgency the whole game, they certainly would have come out of there with a win. No doubt about it. And that crowd was really good at Arkansas. It was good. It was really great for like 10 minutes of playtime. And then I kept hearing about it from like Schulman, and they were like, he was just like, hey, you can't hear anything. And I was like, well, from the broadcast, I mean, I'm not there, so I don't want to rag on it too much, but from the broadcast for like a solid 20 minutes of gameplay, when that game was like back and forth close, every time Duke hit a shot, like you could hear a pin drop in that stadium. But they got ruckus there at the end. You know, congrats for this season's national championship win for Arkansas. But you know, it's and right there at the end of the game when they had that shot toward the end. As soon as I saw Caleb shoot that 3, I knew that wasn't the shot. I just knew that was not the shot that they needed to take. It wasn't the guy that needed to take it. You know, Caleb Foster had 2 points. He was 0 of 4 from the floor before he took that shot. He had literally not made a shot. So when that shot went up from him, I was like, no chance. Game. And it was. And that's, you know, it's a tough game to lose. But the loss itself is like they can bounce back from it. But it's just there's certain problems that Duke is exhibiting in the lineups they're putting out on the floor, the offensive sets that are being ran, or maybe a better way to word that is the lack of offensive sets that are being ran, and just consistency from not Kyle. Kyle he finds a way to go get his numbers, man. Jeremy Roach had a really good game tonight, and Jeremy Roach had a really good game in the last game. Tyrese Proctor, man, is not a consistent scorer. He's just not. 3 of 12, 1 of 6 from 3. He's a great facilitator. He really is. But the offensive sets aren't helping him facilitate. He's a fantastic facilitator, but the way they're running their offense does not promote the way he can pass. It does not promote his play style well enough. And then he just isn't a consistent enough scorer right now. He doesn't find the bottom of the net enough for a guy that's supposed to be the team's second option. He rarely is. Jeremy Roach usually is, offensively speaking. Mark Mitchell, I was praising him that he wasn't having the same dips that he had last season. He's in one of those dips right now. Jared McCain has not been consistent at all. I would like someone who has him still in the top 20 on draft boards to sit me down and explain it. I know he's a great shooter. He just hasn't been aggressive enough. He fades into the back a little bit too much. He certainly is like a very, very identifiable freshman kind of play style at the moment. He's a good player. He's a great shooter. He has a lot of room to grow. Sean Stewart makes mistakes. He clunked a couple of free throws today, real bad, but I want to see more of him in two big lineups. Or heck, even give him run at the 5. It's funny because Shire's fine playing 1-5 at a time. He refuses to let it be Sean Stewart, though. I love that TJ Power finally got run in a big game, 2 of 2 from 3. I wish he would have got way more shot opportunities than that. I would have preferred Duke shot 6 of 22 from 3, which means the rest of the team was 2 of 20, or was 4 of 20 from 3, not TJ Power. I would have preferred TJ Power taking all 22 of those threes. He's the best pure shooter on the team, I think. Jared McCain is a great one as well, though. Tough loss because it's a preventable loss. It's a loss that was predictable, but very, very preventable just from effort. To not get outplayed and just know that effort is the reason they lost. Effort and perhaps a few coaching decisions. It's a tough one. It's a tough one to swallow. You know, if there's anything that I missed talking about that you think's a big issue, comment on the podcast. Hit me up on Twitter, Instagram. Let's talk about it. I'll try to get it on the mic Tuesday again following the Georgia Tech game. And speaking of that Georgia Tech game, this team needs to be on their heels, man. They got to go in there aggressive and win big. I think that people need to see this team be convincing. They haven't been convincing. They have high expectations. They came into the season with high, very lofty expectations. And they so far have not shown that they can meet those expectations. I believe they can get close to meeting those expectations. I'm not sure that this is a national championship team. But I think this could be a Final Four team still. I certainly think that. And I think it'll be interesting to see how this team develops. I said it in the last episode. I know this has been 20 minutes of me being a completely negative person about this team. But I want to reiterate a point that I talked about last week. I think recently fans have gotten very used to Coach K's teams being uber talented and just cooking teams in November. Coming out a conference play 11-0, 13-0, 15-0 to start seasons. I don't think Jon Scheyer's teams operate like that. I said it last week. Jon Scheyer's a little bit more Tom Izzo than he is Mike Krzyzewski in terms of how his team looks in November. But if he's got his teams looking the way Izzo gets his in March, then that's just something that Duke fans are going to have to adjust to. Duke has played very bad in its 2 losses, but they're 2 losses by just 5 points each that they could have won. And that's maybe a good sign. They're playing horrible right now, and they, with a few more shot makes, a little bit more urgency, could be 7-0. Could be still a top 3 team in the country. Instead, they'll drop out of the top 10. They'll probably, fall 12, 13 or so next week. It's a long road. It's a long road. There's going to be bumps. If Duke can beat Baylor, hold themselves to 4 or 5 conference losses, his team can end the season 25-6 or 24-7 and have a fairly convincing season. But they need to start winning games with a little more conviction. The offense needs to be crisper and have more of an identity, run clearer sets. And this team needs desperately a bit more of an identity in the interior and just a little bit less 3 and 4 guard lines. Just a little bit less for my own sanity. Georgia Tech on Saturday. It's been real. I hope you guys are doing well. Thanks for listening as always. Go follow Duke Wisdom on Twitter and Instagram and get going on the Duke Wisdom Network with us so you can put your rants into words and have them published. It's a lovely opportunity. Thanks for listening so much, guys, and I'll talk to you guys again on Tuesday. Hopefully it won't be therapy session part 2.